welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mina and welcome to my safe space on the internet. Today's video is going to be basically me reading a bunch of fantasy because I feel like now that the weather is turning and it's getting a little bit more chilly outside and spooky season is coming up as I'm filming this, I feel like now is the perfect time to really get into the fantasy mood. Last year around this time I read the Throne of Glass series like around November, December, and so that was really fun. It was a really great experience for me, and it made me realize like winter and fall are the time for fantasies, and so I felt like I need to do that justice and really get in there and read some fantasies to get into the fall spirit and the winter spirit and the spooky spirit. So that is what we're doing in this video. We're going to be reading some fantasies. I'm not really sure how many yet. I don't know which ones I'm going to be picking yet. I'm just going to pick them up as I feel them and maybe pick some ones that have been on my TBR for a very long time and that I want to get off my TBR. So that is what we're going to be doing in this video. I hope you enjoy. Please stick around and find out which books I read, and without any further rambling, let's get into this video. I left off filming the first book that we're going to be reading until now, and so it's nighttime and I'm not going to start reading this book until probably tomorrow morning because I am not in the mood to read right now. I don't, like sometimes you're just not in the mood and that's fine. The book that I'm going to be starting with is Leigh Bardugo's The Familiar. I'm not really sure what this is about, but I have read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo and I've read everything in the Shadow and Bone verse, and so I absolutely adore Leigh Bardugo's writing. I love her stories and I love everything that she writes and I love her characters. I don't really know anything about it. I think it's about vampires. I'm not really sure though. I could be wrong. It sounds like I very much could be wrong, but I do love the inside. It has like this pretty like wallpapery type of end papers, so that is pretty. I'm not sure when this came out, but all I know is that I have been meaning to read it since it came out, and now is the time. Better late than never. And I love that the edges are sprayed black. I think that's so cool. Such a cool idea for a book like this. It gives off very dark, very mysterious, very gothic vibe. I'm very excited to start with this book, and I have no expectations. I think it's safer for me to go into it not expecting anything so I don't get disappointed, because it's like a common theme with Leigh Bardugo's writing that it takes me a little bit to get into them. Like with Six of Crows, it took me forever to get into them. With the Shadow and Bone trilogy, it took me a little bit to get into them. So I know it's going to take me a little bit to get into it, and especially with Ninth House. Ninth House took me so long to actually fathom what was happening, and so it took a lot of brain power out of me. Hopefully this takes a little less brain power than Ninth House did, but I always end up having the same feeling when it comes to Leigh Bardugo's writing. They're very memorable characters and setting and premise, and so for that reason, I'm very excited to get into this. This is, like I said, this and Hellbent are the only two books by Leigh Bardugo that I haven't read yet, and so I'm very excited to get into it. Started reading The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and I am now on page 137, so this is how much I have left. I don't really know how I feel about this one, to be honest. I don't really know how to describe it to you either, like plot wise. I don't know how I would describe the plot other than there's a lot of like religious stuff in here. It's very religious based, at least it feels that way to me. It has a lot of talk about religion, which is very different, I feel like, for Leigh Bardugo. Maybe I'm just not remembering her other books very well because I read them a while ago, but it doesn't feel like there was a lot of religious talk in her other books, and so I'm not really sure. But this one is also following the track of me not getting into the book very easily because for some reason, like I said, Leigh Bardugo's writing tends to go a little bit slower for me, and I tend to take a little bit longer to get into the story and understand the characters and understand the premise and the plot and all of that. And the same thing is happening with this one. I really had to push through the first 100 pages, and a part of me still feels like I'm still pushing at this point in the story to like force myself to read because I actually want to enjoy this book. I want to get to know what the story is, and I know I usually like Leigh Bardugo's writing, and so I don't want to give up on this book. If like I'm being really stubborn for no reason at all, other than knowing that I absolutely adore Leigh Bardugo as a person and I want to enjoy all of her writing. So yeah, like I said, I don't really know how I feel about this book, and I don't really know how I feel about the characters. It's very gothic, very like just there's a vibe. There's a very dark gothic vibe going on in the story, and while I enjoy it, for the first 100 pages I was like, I don't know what is going on in the story, but I'm just here along for the vibes and for the ride and for Leigh Bardugo to give me what she needs to give me. There's been some lines in here that I absolutely adore. It has a lot of talk about feminism and classism and misogyny, and it's just really entertaining and very eye-opening to read about a character like the character we're reading about in this book. I am not mad about it, but I also don't really love it all that much as I loved Six of Crows, which that is where I messed up. I went into this book expecting something like Six of Crows, and that's definitely not what I'm getting. So I would say go into it without any preconceived thoughts and opinions about Leigh Bardugo's stories, because you don't want to think that you're getting into something when you're not. That's my update, and I will see you when I have another update. I am 179 pages in. I'm on chapter 27, and I'm really getting into the story. I just feel like, and I don't know why, but I feel like with a lot of Leigh Bardugo's writing, she's very detail oriented, and while that helps build a scene and like it helps you really understand and get a grasp of what's going on and like every aspect of the scene, I just feel like sometimes it tends to be a little bit too much, to the point where I feel like I find myself skimming some passages because I'm just like, I don't need to know what the cook was cooking and how he melted the butter, for example. You know, I know it's important to the story in the grand scheme of things, but I feel like if she hadn't just written every single scene with so much detail, then it would be a lot easier to fall into the story versus having to read like four paragraphs one after another of just pure like descriptive writing. And I'm not the one for descriptive writing. I'm more the type of reader that likes a lot of dialogue, and while there is a lot of that here, I just don't think that it's a equal ratio of 1-to-1 when it comes to dialogue versus descriptive writing, if that makes any sense. It's not anything bad by any means. Like, I absolutely adore reading so much detail sometimes, but sometimes when I'm trying to get into a story and trying to understand a fantasy world, it's not my favorite thing in the world, if that makes any sense. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, I'm 178 pages in, chapter 27, and I'm really glad that I got this far in. I don't know if I'm going to read any more tonight. I have read quite a lot today, and I feel like I need a little break from the story, so I might end up taking a break. We'll see if I feel like reading any more tonight, but if not, then I will see you tomorrow, and we will pick right back up where I left off. finished The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and I cannot believe I pushed through this book. I cannot believe that I actually did it. I actually pushed through and didn't DNF it, even though I really, really wanted to in the beginning. Once you get past the beginning pages of it and the beginning introduction of the world and the characters and the magic system and all of that, once you get past all of that, it really picks up and it really actually becomes interesting. I really loved the characters and I really loved the story. It has a very gothic vibe. I think this is definitely very different for Miss Leigh Bardugo, and I'm glad that I actually picked it up and gave it a chance, even though I was really hesitant about it. I am giving this one 3.5 stars. I'm between 3.5 and 3.75. I'm glad I pushed through, but I still hate the fact that with every Leigh Bardugo book, basically, I have to push through the first 100 pages to finally get to the good stuff. The ending of this was really, really entertaining. I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the characters. I love how the story was brought together in the end, and it just made me care, despite the fact that I didn't care for like the first 100 pages. That's it. That's done for the day. Done for good. Thank God it's off my TBR now and we can move on. We have the next book that I'm going to be reading for this video, which is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black, which is an author I absolutely adore. This book has been on my TBR for a very long time. We're talking years. We're talking, I don't even know when this book came out, but I'm sure it's been a very, very long time. 2013. It's been on my TBR pretty sure since 2014, 2015, because a lot of people talked about Holly Black, and I've read a lot of Holly Black's works before and enjoyed them and loved them and adored them. I love the way that she writes. I love the way that she paints a scene and describes characters and describes the way that a scene is portrayed, and I just really, really adore her writing, and I think she is one of the best fantasy authors in my opinion. I think her stories are very detail-oriented to where you feel like you're a part of the story, and it feels like you just know everybody so clearly and so distinctly, and her writing is just so distinctly her. And so I'm very, very excited. I believe this is a story about vampires, and like I said, it's been on my TBR since probably 2014, and when everybody used to talk about this book on BookTube and stuff like that, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to read it and finally get to it, but I am very, very excited. I think this is one of the only works of Holly Black's that I haven't read yet, so very excited. I'm on page 264 on chapter 27. This book is definitely very, very interesting. It's very Holly Black, but I feel like her writing has only gotten better. Like if you've read, what is the name of that one series? With the Fae. You know what I'm talking about. I'll put a picture of it here. I can't remember the name of it right now. I feel like her writing was a lot better in that series than it is in here, but that's not to say that this book is not good. Like, it's not that at all. I'm really, really enjoying this book a lot. It is very entertaining, very like go, go, go. So it doesn't get boring, but I'm not really sure. Something in it is like not clicking for me. I'm still gonna finish it because I really do enjoy the characters in this book. I think more than the plot or anything really. I'm just enjoying it for the characters because the characters are so three-dimensional and so interesting that I want to know like their backstory and everything going on, and I want to know where they head on with the rest of this book, but for some reason it is dragging a little bit and it is taking me a little longer than usual to read. But like I said, I've been like bouncing back and forth between the audiobook on my Libby app and then reading it in person, and or like reading it physically, and it's really really entertaining, really like just, you know, it's giving the vibes, you know. I wanted vampires, Twilight, fall fantasy type of book, and I got that with this, so I'm not really complaining at all. But I just wish it would go a little bit faster so I wouldn't feel like I'm dragging my feet trying to get through the first half of it only for it to pick up like towards the 50% mark. So I don't know about that, but with that, the rating will probably go down like a couple of points, but no complaints here. I'm really really enjoying it so far. Like I said, I really am loving the characters a lot. I don't remember loving characters in a book this much, like enjoying the characters more than the actual plot of the book. I could not care less about the plot of the book. All I care about is the characters, and that's an interesting experience because I don't think that happens often for me in a fantasy book. So yeah, very very entertaining, very interesting. I really like it, and I love Holly Black's writing, so I'm just going to continue on with the rest of it. I think I should be able to finish it today because I don't really have much else to do and I only have a little bit left. So I think I'm going to like bounce back between the audiobook and the actual book and then hopefully be able to finish it so I can start the next book tomorrow. But I'm definitely enjoying this a lot more than The Familiar. So that says a lot for me. Finished with The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. I am giving this one 3.5 stars. I think it was at a 3 stars, but the ending really really sold it for me and made it into a 3.5 stars. I don't think I'm going to be thinking about this book really a lot now that I've finished it. I think it was a very very fun fantasy, and I think it was great for the time that I'm reading it in. I think it's good for like the Halloween, winter, fall type of weather, and it really was very fun to read. The story was really entertaining. It was a very interesting type of vampire world, vampire rules, vampire world, like fantasy world rules. I don't think I've ever read anything like this before, and it's so entertaining to see how people approach the vampire stuff from different points of views and from different types of like where they come from and how they become and stuff like that. So I really really did enjoy it. 3.5 stars. Like I said, I do recommend it because Holly Black's writing is really entertaining and she really knows how to craft characters that you start to really really care about. That means we are on to the next book in this video, which is going to be The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. And what, I have no idea what this is about, but I was reading the inside sleeve and apparently the character's name is Mina, which is my name. It's literally spelled the same exact way. I know nothing about this. Like I've said, I just love the cover, and this has been on my TBR for a very long time. I really really love the cover. I love the vibe of it. It looks really entertaining and it looks really really fascinating. This book is 321 pages, so I should be able to read this very very quickly. I hope I love it because I have been meaning to read this for so long. This is definitely one of my most anticipated reads, I think, when it comes to the fantasy genre, and so it'll be really disappointing if I don't love it. But I am going into it fully expecting to love it, fully expecting to fall into it and adore it. And so I have heard nothing but good things about this, and like I said, it's been on my TBR for a very long time, and so I'm finally getting to it and I'm so excited that I am. And I don't think this is about vampires. I do think this is actually like about a world that takes place under the water, which is funny because I have a phobia of water, so I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, but hopefully I love it and hopefully I enjoy it, but we'll see. Follow me along as we start this. I'm very excited. have been reading, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. I can't believe I just remembered that title without needing to look at it. That is so impressive with the brain cells that I have right now rattling in here, guys. You do not even know. I am on page 133 on chapter 15. I'm like 20% in, I want to say 30% in. That looks more like 30%. I don't really know how to describe it. It's about this girl in this world where women are like sacrificed to the sea god, and she volunteers because the woman that is supposed to go to the sea god is in love with her brother, and her brother is in love with her, and so, or like in love with the girl that is supposed to be sacrificed, and so the girl sacrifices herself. Mina sacrifices herself, which is so funny to read a book about a character that has the same name as me. I don't think this has ever happened before, like in a coincidence type of way. I never do that. I usually I went through a phase where I looked at books that had a main character with my name, but I haven't done that since I was like 17, 18. And so to find out that this book has a main character with the same name as me was pretty cool, because she is so cute. She basically sacrifices herself to go be the wife of the sea god, and it's really fascinating. It's so beautifully written and like just whimsical and beautiful and lyrical, and like it's all about the vibes. Like I don't really care for the plot really all that much. All I care about is the vibes. Like I love the characters, and I love the way that they communicate with each other, and I love the way that this book is written because it's written so beautifully and it feels like a fantasy. It feels like what the cover looks like, if that makes any sense to you, because to me it makes sense. Like the way that the book looks is the way that the book feels to me when it comes to the vibes. It's very whimsical, very like soft and cute, and like, not that there's nothing happening in here that's like, high stakes, because obviously there is. It's a fantasy book, but to me it just feels like a little bit of a softer fantasy, if that makes any sort of sense to anybody else. I am taking my time with it. I think I'll be able probably to finish it tomorrow. So I don't think this will be done today, but I am, like I said, it's really fascinating to read a story written the way that this book is written, and also to read about characters written in the way that the characters in this book are written, because it's just so different from what I usually read. And I don't know if it's because I haven't read a fantasy like this in a very long time that this feels different than all the other fantasies that I've read, but it does feel very, very different, and it's in a good way because the vibes are immaculate and the characters are immaculate and the writing of this book is immaculate. And I think that the author did such a great job at creating a world that feels so harmonious together, and it makes sense to the plot of the story, So with that being said, I am going to read a little bit more of it today, even though I'm a little bit tired and I want to take a nap really, really bad. I am going to read a little bit more, and then, like I said, I will probably be finishing this tomorrow. It's very, very whimsical, for the lack of a better word. have finished with The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, and I am giving this one a 3.75 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely a very fascinating, very interesting story. I don't think I've ever read anything like this before. It had a very like fairy-like whimsical type of feel to it, and I really appreciated how just beautifully done it was. It just felt so like whimsical, and like it felt like not the type of fantasy like Akatar is, but more like what you think when you think of like a whimsical fantasy. Does that make any sense? I'm not really sure, but all I know is that I really enjoyed this. I had a great time reading it. I definitely recommend it because it is so just easy to read, and the world is so easy to understand, and the characters are so beautiful. I love the characters. I love the characters in this book so much. You do not understand. I love Mina and Shin so much. I just genuinely, I love them. I love them. Protect them at all costs. I love them. I love the story. I love the ending. I love the premise. I love the concept. I love the plot, the characters, the way that this book was written, the types of sentences that the author weaved together to make the story was just so beautifully done and just so magical in every sense of the word. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it, adored it, just genuinely enjoyed it so very much. I started the 10,000 Doors of January, but I really didn't get that far in. I think I'm on like page 10 maybe. Pause. I'm on page 13, and I love the deckled edges. This has deckled edges. I don't know if you could tell, but I absolutely adore deckled edges in any book ever. And this has that. Like I said, I'm not that far into it, so I can't really give you a judgment just yet. But I did read The Six Deaths of the Saint by this author earlier in this year, like a couple of months ago. And I remember thinking that the way that that book was written was so entertaining because it felt like it was talking to the reader instead of talking and like telling a story. It just felt like it was telling a story, like to you as the reader, like this happened to this girl, and like I don't know how to describe it. If you haven't read any writing of this author before, then I think you're missing out, because this book is also written in the same format or like the same point of view, the same storytelling that the Six Deaths of the Saint had, and I really enjoy it. It's definitely so different from everything else in the way that it feels like it's addressing the reader. Like I've said a million and one times now, I really don't know how else to describe it other than saying that it's just so entertaining and so fascinating, and it feels like I'm sitting down and somebody's telling me a story instead of me like reading the story, if that makes any sort of sense. I am definitely so excited to get more into the story because I know that this author's writing and this author's storytelling, some of my favorite that I've ever read. So yeah, I'm definitely genuinely so freaking excited for this book. Coming at you mid-reading the 10,000 Doors of January. I'm on page 166, so I feel like I might be a little under halfway. I'm really enjoying the story, and I'm really enjoying these characters. I really love the way that this book was written, and I knew that I would because I knew, like I said, I read the Six Deaths of the Saint by the same author like a couple of months ago, and I knew that I adored the way that that book was written, that short story was written, and so I knew that I would absolutely adore the way that this book was written, but I did not know how much, because the way that this book is written is just so heart-wrenchingly beautiful. Like there's some lines in here that are absolutely insane that I had to put the book down because of and like think on them for a little bit, because it felt like it was so much happening and it was so devastating and so incredible all at once. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever read a book quite like this before, and the way that this is written, the way that this author writes in general is very different from anything else I've ever read, and so I feel like she has found like such a personalized type of writing that only she does, and that I know immediately and I catch on immediately to whenever I read a book by her, because it's so just like it keeps your attention and it keeps you wanting to know more of the story, and it makes you want to know the characters and the premise and the plot and what the conflict is going to be. And it just is so beautifully done. I don't think it's been so long that I've read a book about a character that I felt so like curious about. And the way that this book is written makes me curious about the characters, and it makes me curious about the story and where it's going and what's happening and why stuff is happening. And I just want to understand all of it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that this book is written. I don't think it's like the plot or the premise, even though it's a very interesting plot and premise and characters. I think it's the way that the book is written that really captures my attention and keeps me reading, because I feel like I don't ever really read books written this way. She has done such an incredible job in creating a story that feels like it's telling you the story instead of just you reading it. And yeah, that is my thought on this right now. I am going to read a little bit more tonight. I don't think I'm going to finish it today. I will probably be finishing it tomorrow. But like I said, I'm really enjoying my time with it, and I'm taking my time with it just because I want to digest the words that I'm reading and digest everything going on in the story because of how much is happening and how much I want to know about what's going to happen in the future. Welcome back to the end of this video. Not really, because we still have the wrap up, but I have officially finished with the 10,000 Doors of January, and I am giving this one a good old 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. I love, and I've said this 1,000,001 times so far, so say it with me, I love the way that this book was written. I love the way that this author writes his story, because it's so entertaining to follow along with a story that is so like, just like it captures your attention. It really makes it impossible for me to put it down, and I feel that way with all of this author's writing. I will definitely be looking more into the rest of this author's writing, because I feel like I have read 2 of her stories so far, and I feel like I've loved both of them so incredibly much, and I give them both very high ratings. And so I feel like going into more of her books and her stories is definitely a good idea, and I definitely recommend her if you haven't read any of her books so far, because I feel like you're missing out if you haven't. Her stories are so entertaining and so interesting, and it's just so like thought-provoking and attention-grabbing, and specifically the way that they're written is just so absolutely entertaining. And I'm so glad that I ended this video with this book, because I feel like had I read it first, I would have been disappointed with the rest of the books that I read in this video. But yeah, this is absolutely my favorite read out of this entire video. Speaking of, let's go into the wrap-up and talk about the books that I read in this video and what I thought of them, just to give you a refresher. Definitely recommend it, absolutely adored it, loved the writing, loved the characters, loved the premise, loved the story. Just so entertaining and so fascinating, and such a different type of fantasy that I don't think I've ever read anything like before. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I had such a fun time. I love fantasy for the fall and for the winter time. Let me know down below if you have any recommendations for any fun fantasies that you're reading for this fall and winter. Let me know what your favorite fantasy is in general so I can put it on my TBR. I had so much fun doing this video. I love fantasy and I love reading it when the weather is turning, and now it's cold, and so now is the perfect time for all of that. I am so up for it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way to the end, that means the world to me. I so appreciate it. And with that being said, that is the end of this video. I hope you have the very best day. Treat yourself to something nice, and I'll see you guys again next week with another video. Goodbye.